Just wait until it clicks over to 1 o'clock and then we'll start. So shouldn't be too much longer. There we go. My clock's just clicked to 1 o'clock, so I'll kick off. So first of all, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to what is the rearranged final session of our Net Zero Week of webinars. Thanks to those of you that have joined today, and also to those of you who may have attended our previous sessions, which took place later in or late in September, just gone. So just to introduce myself, first of all, I'm Jonathan Howell. I'm an energy advisor at Coventry City Council, and I'll be chairing today's session. Now, a bit of context for you, first of all, for those that don't know, the Decarbonisation Net Zero programme is designed to help businesses in the West Midlands and Warwickshire areas effectively reduce their energy use and also access grant funding to facilitate that. Now, our previous sessions from the back end of September, we gave guidance on a variety of things. We gave guidance on how to simply reduce your energy consumption on site. We went through energy auditing. We gave a nice demonstration of how to go through carbon accounting, and also we had a nice little session on solar PV as well. So today's session is effectively going to draw those together, basically, sort of tie everything together and provide you some real life examples of that guidance in action, basically. So it's going to cover a couple of things. First of all, we've got a really good net zero and sustainability journey from a local business to go through. Then we've got a really good case study example of a business who's engaged with us and received some funding. And then finally, I'll give you a little bit of an overview at the back end of the session on the grant funding, what our programme gives and what you can receive when you reach out for support from us. Before we start though, a bit of housekeeping first of all. If you could all turn your videos off, I think most of you have done that, so thank you. Really importantly though, if you can just put yourselves on mute as well, just to cut down on that background noise. In regards to Q&A and so on, we're going to have the actual Q&A at the end of the session, so after myself and our two speakers have spoken. But if you do have any questions, put them in the chat. I will either look at those at the end of the session, or my team are on the call as well. They'll answer things as we go along if it's more of a generic question for you. So use the chat if you can, but also at the end, if you want to ask a more pertinent question, pop up your hand and I'll open the floor to you as well. Slides, as you would expect, really, slides will be sent to you after the session along with the recording, and we also send out a feedback form just to let us know how we did, how we can improve moving forward. Next slide, please, Maria. Okay, so as you can see, yeah, just about to start with our first speaker next. Then our next speaker will speak for about 10 minutes from around 20 past, and then I'll have the Q&A at 1:30. We might overrun on this session, as I very often say on these webinars. If we do, then great. It means we've got good engagement. So, but if we can, though, we'll aim as close as we can to 1:30. Okay, next slide, please, Maria. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Marie Wells from the MTC. Over to you, please, Marie.
Hello, nice to see so many people here. If we could click onto the next slide, please. So I'm from the MTC, I'm the head of sustainability there. We do multiple things, but basically across various different industries, we're there to help UK manufacturing transform. We're partly government funded, and we work across things from product design, process innovation, digital transformation, supply chain, and sustainable manufacturing and training and skills. So that's kind of just to give you an idea of who we are. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we're trying to do as the MTC, being that we are there to impact UK manufacturing, we are sort of looking at it from three lenses. One, our own transition, where our current identified parameters are net zero, obviously, because that's beginning to affect everyone. I know we certainly get a lot of queries from our customers and supply chain, and I'm sure some of you are beginning to see that too. Circularity, which is all around our use of resources and efficiency when it comes to material, water, energy, and basically how we use stuff, then water efficiency and biodiversity. That helps us understand what we need to do to help us understand how we can help the external transition, so helping with people's sustainability journeys, scope 1, 2, and 3, designing for sustainability, efficiency, and even been doing some stuff on business model change and supply chain. We very much take the view that sustainability is systems thinking on a planetary scale, and consumption reduction is a huge part of that. And so that's kind of where we play. Next slide, please. So just to sort of couch it in the what is sustainability terms, because a lot of us are beginning to be much more aware of net zero and our carbon emissions. But carbon is just one of the 9 planetary boundaries, of which we are exceeding 6. And if you concentrate purely on the one, you might miss some real opportunities from taking a more holistic approach. It also affects the social boundaries. So that's how do we make sure that everybody on this lovely planet that we reside lives within a social or foundation. They have access to food, they have access to healthcare, education, etc. And all those things we hopefully here take for granted to a certain degree. But how, as a business, how do we do that and make sure we're still economically viable? Because we can be the best business in the world, but if we can't then afford to sustain, then we can't actually help show others how to change. Next slide, please. So from a manufacturing perspective, about 45% of UK emissions are from manufacturing, and approximately 89% of those are associated with the stuff we buy, so outside of the UK. Next slide, please. So to put this into a bit of context, I found this really useful. A few years ago, we did a piece of work looking at industry, various different industries, and I'm trying to understand where their carbon footprint was within their manufacturing. So ignoring operation and end of life, as much as we don't like to do that, as a general rule, in this project, we were looking at manufacturing, and we found that for the aerospace industry, which was the one I was looking at, 84% of the carbon footprint was coming from extraction of raw materials and materials processing. And what's really interesting about that is that's also where you're going to get the most negative impact on biodiversity, on land use, etc. So that drives the need for thinking more circularly about how you use your materials and how you reuse, reduce, remanufacture, repair, and how you could potentially valueize that. That's probably not a word, I apologize. Because suddenly that takes a huge chunk of your carbon footprint away. Next slide, please. Because fundamentally, if everyone lived like we do in the UK, we would need, it's actually gone down. It's 2.4 planets to sustain our current way of life. Next slide, please. So in terms of net zero transition, hopefully everybody knows what the scopes of emission are. Scope 1, anywhere where you burn stuff, so your company vehicles, your gas supply, likely to be your main ones. You might have some process emissions. That tyre fire in the car park, that would be a Scope 1 emission. Scope 2 is anywhere where anybody burns something for you. So that's creation of energy. For most of us, that's our electricity supply. And then Scope 3 is everything else. How does stuff get delivered to you? What do you invest in? What do you buy? How do you travel? How do your employees travel, etc.? And next slide, please. So in terms of our approach, we understand that within that scope framework, that scope 1 and 2 are in our direct control. So we have an internal target to be net zero scope 1 and 2 by 2030 and net zero by across all scopes by 2041 in line with the West Midlands Business Pledge. So that means for us understanding how to change our gas supply, how much renewables can we generate ourselves. However, we're using market-based analysis, so we do allow a level of buying electricity from grid as long as it's backed by certificates of renewable generation. And there's also the potential to do direct purchase power, but I'll get on to that. And then within the wider scope of scope 3, it's how do we become more circular in our approach, decreasing our resource use, valuing reuse, repair, remanufacture, prioritizing sustainable suppliers, etc. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? Well, we've had to start by just understanding what's going on. So when we first did our carbon footprint back in 2019, it was about 10,000 tons of CO2e. The last full financial year, it was down to about 7,300 tons of CO2e. And you know what a lot of that was? Understanding our data better and being able to better categorize what things were. It's not all that. I will get on to specifics by scope in a second, but that did create a significant impact on our scope 3, understanding what we were using and what we were measuring. So that data piece was really important. Then the next piece I have on here is behavior, because actually we've reduced a lot through understanding how we use our energy around the MTC. One of the first things I did when I took my role as head of sustainability is ask everyone to turn things off over one weekend and figure out how much energy was potentially being wasted. Now, I got a lot of challenge from various departments about that, and it was mostly around nervousness about whether certain bits of kit could or couldn't be turned off. But we had taken the approach that if you didn't know, then it was being turned off. The only thing that didn't turn back on, one bog standard PC. And that's allowed us to think about when things need to go on and off, put in processes to make that better, which between that year and the current one saved over, well, the difference in the year total was about 1 million kilowatt hours, which is phenomenal. And we've year on year decreased our electricity usage, which has been surprising actually this year, because we are replacing our CHP as our CHP has ceased to run as efficiently and the parts aren't available to repair it. So I expected the electricity to go up and it didn't, because of the stuff that's been implemented. And then it's reduce, how do you mitigate and change technology, and then worst case, you're in offsetting. But obviously, depending on what targets you're aligning to, depends how much you could offset to still hit those targets. Next slide, please. So what is carbon accounting? Carbon accounting is a practice of using country, company or individual data to estimate greenhouse gas emissions. Currently, the estimation is dependent on the quality of your data, but also what emissions factors you use. For scope 1 and 2, it's relatively simple. For scope 3, there are quite a lot of different databases. So I would say if you are tackling your scope 3 and you are thinking about, you are getting carbon footprint data from your supply chain, which is a consistent challenge for a lot of people at the moment and not where you'd start. if you are getting consistent data, you can't compare one person's value with another. You're better comparing that person to their behavior in previous years. How much reduction have they achieved, rather than, oh, well, that person's got 7,000 tons of CO2e and that person's got 5,000. If that one's started at 9 and come down and that one's stayed the same, you're probably better going with the one that is actioning change. Because we're finding more and more companies, larger companies, are making disclosure requests because there is likely to be the need to disclose scope 3 going forward. SECA reporting, if you're over 250 employees, you already have to do, is currently scope 1 and 2 business travel, but that's potentially going to change. There is some government consultation on that and what the carbon adjustment border looks like. Next slide, please. So scope 1, heat represents almost half of UK's energy demand, with 57% of that for space and water heating, and most of that's natural gas. So that's going to be a significant challenge. For us, we're in the process of getting a heat assessment done to look at what the right technologies for us to change are. We want to take a mixed technology approach for a couple of reasons. One being that then we will be able to talk about the pros and cons of varying approaches in forums like this going forward. High heat manufacturing processes represent a significant challenge. Transition to non-fossil fuel vehicles. We've obviously put in charging for non-fossil fuel vehicles and are going to non-fossil fuel vans. But basically, you would look at how do you reduce the energy you're using. So we put in quite a lot of timing plugs and things like that to make sure we're not heating the building when we don't need to. Looked at behavior and space utilization, because some spaces don't need heating all the time, etc. If your workshop space, potentially can you think differently because of the movement of the employees, possibly go infrared heating rather than less adaptive heat pumps. We're looking at potentially combining that for our workshop and office spaces, though we have been looking at solar thermal PV as well, particularly for the replacement of our CHP, because our CHP feeds our absorption chiller, and that means the solar thermal will be able to provide our cooling in the summer when we're getting the most energy out of it. Next slide, please. Scope 2 is, as I said, your electricity. So the first thing to do here is, one, look at your efficiency, do a shutdown, find out how much you could save. We saved a lot of money reducing our electricity. So potentially that's, if you haven't done it, a way of releasing revenue to make some of the other changes. You can, so there are two ways of analysing in scope 2. There is what's called location-based, where you go on the UK fuel mix and say what your carbon impact is, or you use market-based, where if you commit to a renewable contract, your emissions for scope 2 zero out because you've got electricity, but it needs to be backed by certificates of generation, REGOs, ideally untraded REGOs. You can get virtual or direct power purchase agreements with local, no, they don't have to be local if they're virtual, but solar farms and wind farms, etc. There is, for example, I believe, a new renewable site set to be put in by E.ON, so there would be the potential for that kind of thing within the Coventry area going forward. So we did put together a sort of detailed view of all of our sort of initiatives to try and figure out where our residuals will be, what was active, what was proposed and the strategic approach. Next slide, please. Scope 3. I often get challenged, why should I do my Scope 3? Because it's not in my direct control, and if everybody sorts out their Scope 1 and 2, then my Scope 3 goes away. But if nobody does their Scope 3, there's no need for anyone else to adapt. So, next slide, please. If the supply chain doesn't adapt, you will get just a few people doing the right thing in certain places. Next slide, please. Whereas if, as we're starting to see, you push Scope 3 through your supply chain and require targets, there's a potential for lost business, and you get more change through the whole entire supply chain. Next slide, please. And hopefully a lot more people change, and it creates opportunities as well as lost business. Next slide, please. So Scope 3, and a bit of a whistle-stop tour. How do you use less material? Use more secondary material, so recycled, reused components, etc. Decreasing manufacturing wastes. There's a really good example that I've put there if the slides are shared from British Sugar. They've gained a lot more revenue just from the waste streams. They make the same amount of sugar as they always have. Travel, prioritizing public transport and low carbon options for your business travel and your employee travel. And can you do things like combined logistics for your transport distribution and co-location of delivery, working with other companies as sort of local to you to decrease the impact of the travel? And where do you actually require action from your supply chain and to engage with your supply chain? Next slide, please. Scope 3 downstream is, how's your product used? How does it get treated end of life? Can it be recycled? Can it be taken apart and some parts reused? Can you bring it back in and refurbish it and sell it again? How do you decrease increase the life of the component, the life of the material? How do you increase the utilization so that it's not like the average drill, for example, gets used for 8 minutes of its life? Does everybody need to own their own, or could we have a tool library? You know, but how as a business would you make that valuable? Avoid investing in high emitting things. So basically, don't tackle everything at once. Figure out where your hotspots are. So for us, workshop sort of materials and catering are big ones for us. Workshop machine was a laser machine we bought this year, so hopefully we won't see that one in next year's. They've got their laser machine. And then tackling the suppliers within those areas, but also understanding the efficiency within those areas. Next slide, please. And then I would encourage you to think about your data. So primary data would be like kilowatt hours, number of kilograms of material you buy. Where you can use primary data, that's really good. But in Scope 3, the best place to start is usually spend data. So you can get an approximation of your Scope 3 by going, I spent this much with this supplier who provides that type of service or part, etc. And you can get an estimation, and then you can understand where your hotspots are and where best to start. But making sure that data is clean, you remove duplicates and keep it traceable is really important. So for us, as I said, we've got targets around Scope 1 and 2 for 2030. So what you need to understand is speed and level of investment that's possible for your business, where you can save money through efficiency measures, what external funding is available to you, and the timeline infrastructure projects, because they do potentially take a while, particularly if you're a large business. And scope 3, it's about understanding how aggressive you want to be with your supply chain, because it requires your supply chain to have dealt with their scope 1 and 2. So hence, a lot of our supply chain doesn't even have targets yet, which is why our targets are further out for scope 3 than they are for scope 1 and 2. And I think that is me. I apologise for going over slightly.
No problem at all. Lovely. That was really interesting, and so thanks for sharing your obvious wealth of knowledge. And for any businesses on the call, I hope that's giving you some food for thought and some pointers of how to do things and do them well. What I will caveat that with is, as we said in the chat, the slides will be shared. So there's a lot of information on the slides. We'll share them later on. So if anything does pique your interest, as it were, it'll be on the slides. We'll present to you later on. So lovely. So moving on quickly to our next speaker, somebody who has had some support from our program, and I think this is a really good case study of what we do in our program well, and what businesses can do out in the field to reduce their costs and their carbon. I would like to hand you over to Christian Keane from HPL Prototypes. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks all for listening as well. So I'm Christian Keane. I'm the Operations Director at HPL Prototypes, and we're based in Aldesley in Coventry. So here at HPL Prototypes, we turn designs mainly from automotive and aerospace, but we turn virtual designs into reality for our customers. So we take their virtual design data, we turn them into real life physical models that helps them with a variety of things, but helps them understand whether their designs are right, ready before they release production tooling, and we use them for marketing purposes as well. Okay, so that's HPL. We engaged a while ago with Coventry City Council and the West Midlands Combined Authority, because we've been committed for a number of years now to improving our operational efficiency, but also our environmental impacts. We suffered, along with the rest of the world, around with rising energy costs, but also our customers are demanding much more focus on sustainability from us as well. And so it's made us, again, reassess our energy consumption. We still had areas of the business that and areas of the site that operate, use inefficient halogen lighting, etc. Use electric heaters for heating large spaces and gas heaters as well. And these are costly and energy intensive as well. So not only were they costing us lots of money, but they were misaligned with our sustainability goals and those of our customers as well. And so over the course of time, our aim has been to lower our carbon footprint as low as possible, but also with it our operating costs, making our facilities energy efficient and environmentally friendly, but also better places to work as well for our staff. Again, we saw the opportunity to modernise some of the older areas of our building. If you've ever driven down the A45 in Coventry, you'll know our building is fairly old. So it's a 1937 building, which brings its own challenges. Next slide, please. So when we engaged with Coventry City Council, we had an energy audit. So they came over and they assessed our energy consumption and areas where we could save. And as part of that energy audit, it highlighted two particular areas where we were thinking of investing anyway, but confirmed that for us. But that was to replace our outdated halogen lighting in one of our main buildings, swapping that out for energy efficient LED white lighting, but also stopping the use of our electric space heaters and replacing that for more energy efficient air conditioning units and destratification fans as well. So off the back of the energy audit, we applied for a grant, and we actually got awarded a grant of just over £31,000, which we're very grateful for, and that was to do those two projects. And that's actually going to save us a significant amount on electricity over the coming years. So those two projects alone can save us up to nearly £7,000 and save nearly 10 tonnes of CO2e as well. Next slide, please. We're not going to stop there, though. We've been working for about 10 years now on our sustainability goals. We won't stop there. We're continuing to explore other options. One of the biggest biggest opportunities for us is to actually look at installing solar panels on our roof. We've got quite a vast roof, but it's on an old building, so we're working closely with our landlord to be able to do that. And we're going to also look at replacing some of our last remaining large gas heaters in our design studios to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and cut emissions further. We're working with a national waste partner as well to reduce our non-recyclable waste even further. And they're actually looking at ways that we can try and recycle some of our polyurethane materials that we use heavily in our production processes. And then finally, we're continuing to collaborate with Coventry City Council and explore further opportunities for sort of SME growth and energy reduction initiatives. So not only have we had a lot of help from Coventry City Council on these grants, but that's actually unlocked opportunities for us to engage with the High Growth Accelerator Programme as well through the West Midlands Combined Authority. So one good thing has led to another for us, and we've got a discovery workshop coming up with those guys in a week or two. So just this is probably a recap on what we've already said. So our next steps: replace all old LED lighting throughout the facility. We've only got one more building to do, and look at solar as well. There are a number of challenges and opportunities that we've come up against. So obviously, as a small business, the upfront cost of our sustainability goals is sometimes a barrier to us to doing them as quick as we like. But with the help of Coventry City Council, etc., that's been able to help us significantly, and we've been able to recognise some long-term cost savings and carbon reduction as well. It can be sometimes a bit of a minefield navigating regulations and incentives, but again, working with the business growth of West Midlands, they've made it incredibly easy for us, giving us access to these grants, etc. Okay, so just final bit of advice from me: don't just reach out to Coventry City Council as quick as if you're interested in access to grants. They've been more than helpful. Denise Osborne in particular, she came out and did our energy audit for us, but then she held her hand all the way through to securing the grant, even from she's made the minefield of form filling a breeze for us, and she's helped us all along the way. So I'd encourage you all to reach out as quickly as possible if you're interested. Okay, thanks for listening.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So, well, first of all, Christian, thanks for your kind words and good feedback on the programme. And for anyone on the call, that is a great example of what we do day in, day out. So if it is of interest, please reach out, which leads me on nicely to our bit, which is a bit about how you can access our support, basically. So as you probably gathered by now, we're about giving you advice and funding to reduce your energy consumption. And Christian's given you a nice overview of the things that we can help fund, such as heating, lighting, solar, etc., etc., etc. So anything that can reduce your use on your business premises, we can help get involved in, and we do that via a two-stage process, as we've just discussed. First of all, we give you a free on-site audit, which identifies those areas where you're being inefficient, and then we'll recommend ways to improve that efficiency by putting in newer kit that will get that energy use down. And the good bit, as I always say, is the grant funding we've got available. We have grant funding of up to 50% available between £1,000 and £100,000 to support those projects, basically. So it is a free project, and the grant is that. The grant is a grant. There's nothing to pay back. So get in touch if that is of interest. One thing to stress, though, at this stage, obviously being the middle of October, the programme does end in March 25. So you've got time. We have got the money available, but my advice is to get in touch soon, get me or one of my colleagues, such as Denise, on site soon, and we can go through the process with you. Next slide, please, Maria. And here's how you do that. So if you do want to register with us, there are two different little codes there, little links to register, one for the Midlands and one for Warwickshire. It all feeds into us, though. Then we'll give you a quick call and go through what you're looking for, and then we'll book the site visit, basically. And if you'd like to look at that QR code, that gives you more information about the programme moving forward as well. Next slide, please, Maria. Okay. Q&A, we're running a bit over, but if anyone's got any questions, if they want to perhaps put their hand up or drop it in the chat. We haven't had many questions in the chat, which means that we must be doing our presentations well. So kudos to our two speakers. If we don't have any questions in the chat, I've got a couple of questions I've prepared along the way, if that's okay. The first one to you, Christian, if you're still there. Well, I imagine that the main driver here, as always, is cost savings, and you alluded to this in your talk. Did you get much pressure from within your supply chain to demonstrate that you were reducing your carbon? And if so, was that another driver of why you were looking to do this?
It is, yeah. We do get a lot of pressure. We work with a lot of the OEMs around the UK. They're obviously on a big sustainability drive and have been for a number of years. So their requirements become our requirements as well. So we've been asked more than ever what our sustainability program looks like. They do track us on our energy usage, our gas usage, and how we recycle as well, amongst other things. So it's incredibly powerful for us to be able to go back to our customers and say, this is what we've done and this is what we're doing.
Yeah, we do see that when we go and do our audits, we do see that a lot, especially in the automotive supply chain in our region. We're seeing that a lot more and more. Hence why I asked. So thanks for your answer. And then I've got a question for you, Marie, if you're still on the call. Not sure if you are. This is a very, very, very general question, basically. Obviously, you've given us a lot of information about your journey. If I was a small SME, say a very small 20, 30, 40 employee SME, typically family owned, we see a lot of those sort of company sizes in our program, and I didn't know where to start. Where would I kick off from? Is it, as you've said in your presentation, you've got to start to measure things first of all, or is there any kind of other? How do I get started? I'm really daunted. What do I do? Basically, is what I'm asking.
Understand. Yeah. So just looking at, even at top level, your energy use from your bills and stuff, and then figure out where you can sort of save through actions that you do around getting everybody involved. I think is really important. You can't be a sustainable business without a sustainable culture. But then there are things like we did the change to LED lighting as well, like Chris highlighted, that really do save you money quite quickly. So sort of, I would say once you start hitting some of the simple things, it sort of starts to feel less daunting.
A bit more, doesn't it? I suppose. Yeah. Good answer. Thank you. I do see a lot of people who perhaps haven't got the time, or they haven't got a sustainability manager on site. So that's a good place to start. So anybody that's on the call, don't be daunted. Start by looking at your energy consumption and your bills. Engage with us if you want to, and it will start to snowball once you start to see the benefits moving forward. So thank you, Marie, for that answer. We haven't got any more questions, and we've overrun by 7 minutes. So I'm going to wrap things up now. So, well, firstly, thank you to our speakers today for giving up their time and for presenting. It's been really insightful. Just to confirm again that all content from the session and a recording and all the slides will be shared with you shortly. And finally, thanks to all of you for attending today. I hope you found it useful. If anybody would like to register on our program, just go onto that slide and do so. And I may see you on site at some point soon. Thanks for joining, and good afternoon.